Right. We've got a lot to cover with this. Of course, Tom talked about the unanswered questions here. What caused this unprecedented decision to literally ground all domestic flights for several hours? Let's bring in former FAA Administrator Randy Babbitt. Thank you very much for joining us. Any clue as to what happened here, or what are you hearing from your sources and colleagues?
And just to follow up on what we've heard now from Tom Costello, as well as Steve Ratner, who's been flying for 30 years. Tom says, like Ratner, pilots have never heard of anything happening like this before. What could have caused it?
That's a great question. I'm sure there's a lot of people at the FAA asking that question. I don't know whether it was a simple mechanical failure, something, in the computer, internal workings, a software problem, hacking. I wouldn't rule anything out at this point, but it's an incredibly important system because every flight to every airport, the pilots have to know if there's anything that's not operating up to standards at that airport, and they get a notice to the airman that perhaps, one runway, the electronic approach system isn't working properly. Well, they have to know that. They have to plan their fuel loads and things like that to compensate. So it's a very important system. And personally, I've not heard a thing yet that would explain how this failed.
Yeah, Mr. Babbitt, what would you say to Americans? I'm sure a lot of Americans are surprised that there's not backups in the system, that there's not redundancy in the system that would have prevented this from happening. Why wouldn't there be? Does that have to do with the desperate need for upgrades that we've been hearing about throughout the morning?
Yeah, upgrades would certainly help, and there are some backup capabilities, but your worst nightmare is when the primary system fails and the secondary system doesn't take over. And I'm going to imagine right now that that's probably part of the problem, that the alternative means to produce the same information and distribute it. At any given moment, there are anywhere from 7,000 to 9,000 flights in the air. This system is covering, I think, close to 30 million square miles of this country. So it's a very important system. So I don't think this is going to be a single failure. I think you're going to find a dual failure somewhere.
Mr. Babbitt, can you talk a little bit about the threshold inside the FAA for not a ground stop, but to have all domestic flights anyway stopped for a period of time? I can imagine the conversations that were going on. They understand the implications of doing this, what it means for air travel, what it means economically, and on and on and on. What was that conversation like, and where is that bar?
Well, the first step of those questions is going to be, is the safety or the integrity of the air traffic control system compromised? If the answer, that's a simple question, and if the answer is yes, then you're going to have a problem. Now, what is this affecting? At any given moment, as I said, there's over 7,000 flights in the air. It's going to have a cascade effect. If an airplane is 2 hours delayed leaving Atlanta, then it won't get to its next destination 2 hours late. The crews can get illegal. They can only fly so much in a day. So it's going to have a rumbling and accumulating effect to the system. But it's going to start with, is the system safe? And the answer is, in this case, yes, it's been compromised. The information that pilots need to operate safely is not available to them. And you're just simply not going to dispatch to an airport that you don't know what condition that airport is in.
Randy, we obviously don't know the cause of what happened here. White House has suggested that, at least initially, they don't believe it was some sort of cyber attack, some sort of hack, but there's going to be a thorough investigation. But talk to us about what's happened at the FAA to prepare for such a possibility. What steps are taken to try to prevent some sort of hack by a rogue actor or whoever to do something exactly like this?
Well, I haven't been at the FAA in a number of years, but certainly, they should be using state-of-the-art, cyber protection so that you wouldn't have a hack. Your worst nightmare, which we saw years ago, you may remember a fire in the Chicago Air Traffic Control Center, which was malicious. It was a disgruntled employee. So don't get to the bottom, but the preparation. There's certainly, if you say to yourselves internally at the highest levels, is the system safe? And if the answer is no, then you stop it. But if the answer is, well, we have some workarounds, there's another way to get this information. Where is the information? It's in a database. It's being collected live 24 hours a day. Every airport reports any anomaly. It goes into the system. It's then reported to the pilots operating in those airports. Well, could we find that? Could we get into that information and manually get it to the pilots? And I'm guessing that the answer was no, we can't. So that's why they shut it down.
With the stipulation here, Mr. Babbitt, that we don't know exactly what happened to this NOTAM system. Just more broadly, we've had a couple of analysts, expert pilots say that there's an antiquated system more broadly in the air traffic control. What's being done to update that? And do you have any concerns about our current air traffic control system?
I don't have any concerns about it, but we certainly could continue moving up. And of course, in this day and age, when you're talking about software, it's outdated next week. I mean, the stuff develops and improves so rapidly. It is a challenge, and especially when you have a system as big as the air traffic control system. Remember, you're melding data from literally thousands of points, tracking tens of thousands of airplanes. It's a very complex system, but it runs well. It could be improved? Of course it could, and costs money. So that's always a challenge. But yes, the system is safe. It certainly could be improved.
Former FAA Administrator Randy Babbitt, thank you very much for your insight this morning. We really appreciate it.